This is the KoperCrabb Podcast.
I am Cheney Crab.
I am Naveen Copperwise.
So today we just put out pre-orders for the brand new ENTHEOS in Purgatory long sleeves. You can get those at our Big Cartel, entheosofficial.bigcartel.com. Go and pick one up. If you want to see us live, come to the Whitechapel Christmas show on December 22nd in Knoxville, Tennessee. We also just announced a European tour with Archspire and Psychroptic and Benighted, so go and check that out. Today on the podcast, our guest is John Longstreth, who is, what's
Drummer
up, man?
extraordinaire.
Drummer extraordinaire.
The master.
I'm spilling tea everywhere.
Oh, no.
I'm sorry.
Wipe up the tea.
Yeah, sorry, guys.
All right, no problem.
Now you're going to spill tea on the podcast.
True.
I just spilled tea on the podcast. And it's going to get all wet.
Do you need to grab a towel or something? We can hold down the fort here. Okay.
Okay,
Good to
sick.
go. All right.
And napkins.
So how's it going,
What's
man?
up, guys?
What's up?
I'm good. I'm great. I've got all kinds of crazy things happening. What are you guys up to, other than playing massive shows and going on massive tours with Archspire and release?
We are hanging at the house, working on music a lot, and trying to keep our heads attached to our bodies.
Sounds terrible.
Yeah, I know.
God.
It's a pretty good time.
You're about to go on a European tour as well, right?
Yeah, we're going out with Monstrosity. January, we go over to Europe for 30 days.
Okay.
We haven't been to Europe in 5 years, so I don't
damn.
know. We haven't been to Europe in 5 years, and I don't recall having seen Monstrosity do much of anything for a long time. But
is that who we saw in Kentucky or no?
No.
Okay.
Excuse me?
Oh, I thought we might have seen them, but
No, we saw
I guess
Atheist.
We didn't. Oh, Atheist.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
It's another fantastic band from back then.
Yeah.
No, Monstrosity is doing 30 years of Imperial Doom.
Oh,
Wow.
sick.
So,
Okay.
yeah, that's one of those old school death metal records that more people should know. Because that's where you first hear George Corpse Grinder Fisher. So he was on that, and I think he was on the second one, Millennium, and then everybody bought Vile, and they heard that opening scream.
Yeah.
And it's like, and all of a sudden everybody just talks about his neck all the time. What about his voice?
That is
what about
so
his voice?
true.
His voice and there's no cupping.
Yeah,
No
that's true.
cupping. I mean, we were talking about that last week, like the no cupping.
He's cup phobic. Like he holds it so far down. There's not a chance you're gonna think that I'm cupping this mic. It's not happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not even in
that.
the vicinity of cupping. Forget about it.
No.
He does
It's
have
brutal.
a massively big neck, so I get why it's talked about. But yeah, it's become almost a metal meme.
Sure it has. Like a lot of people when they're working out, they'll do circles with their arms or whatever to get their shoulders big, or they'll do circles with their hips to make their. And he does circles with his neck every night.
That's true.
So of course he's got muscle neck.
Yeah.
That's totally true.
It's a famous neck. That's for sure.
Famous neck.
So you live in New York now, right? New York City?
Yeah, we are in Brooklyn. I have a window that overlooks the fancy streets of Brooklyn. It's fantastic. We got here in August. I've been in New York City for 7 years now. Before that, I was in upstate New York. So I actually left Kansas in 2003.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
2003.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Where did you live in upstate New York?
Saratoga Springs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Skinless moved me up there.
Oh.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Okay. Yeah, I remember that. I saw you with Skinless.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Where?
At the Pound in San Francisco. And it was like the singer crowd surfed like to the bar.
He would have. I remember the Pound. Every show I ever played at the Pound was absolutely over the top.
I was there at all of them.
Absolutely nuts.
Actually, there was one that you guys played with Origin at the Pound that I didn't go to, and I regret it forever because everybody talks about it. It was you guys and I believe I could be totally wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was you guys and Poison the Well. Did that ever happen? Or am I just wrong?
Poison the Well. That was Origin, Poison the Well, Candaria, and Cryptopsy.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
You hear that lineup, dude?
Candaria
that
as
is so
well?
sick.
That is
Candaria scared the shit out of all of us, man.
Yeah.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
I mean, Ken Schock. For me, that's a great drumming lineup right there. God. You and Ken Schock on the same lineup.
Kenny would do the funniest thing, man. He hit his drum so hard, and he was changing out broken cymbals every night. But he would take his drumsticks and he would scrape them on the pavement because he liked the stick, but he didn't like how round the tip was because he was pitting out his heads too hard. So he would. It's like,
okay.
I go around the back of the venue one day and I just see him kind of like down on his haunches, just against the sidewalk. I'm like, what are you doing? And he explained it to me, and I've never seen anybody do that since.
Yeah, dude, I went to, so I didn't go to that show, which now I really regret not going because I forgot that Candiria was on it. I don't know if I knew who you guys were at the time, but I was trying to remember, like me and my brother used to go to all the metal shows at the Pound, and Origin opened a show for another metal tour, and I was trying to remember who it was, and I just can't. And that's how I found out about you guys. And I was like, I'm like this, 16-year-old, 15-year-old, I'm way into death metal, play drums and stuff. And I see you go on stage up out of nowhere. It's like, my life's never been the same since that night.
If like the first time we went there must have been in 2000. That's hard to say because that Cryptopsy tour was 2001, I think.
It was probably shortly. I feel like it was shortly after that. I feel like you guys were touring a lot in that time, and it was like because I saw you guys shortly after that. You opened for another tour. I can't remember who it was, but I remember James being like, "Oh, so and so is gonna come on next, and they're really gonna blow you away." If you thought that we were brutal, and I remember being like, "He's out of his mind." Like the next band is. Because I knew the next band, and I was like, they're nowhere near what I just saw, Because Informus wasn't out yet. And like the next day, I went to the store and bought the first album that's on Relapse. I think it's just the self-titled.
Was it Vader?
It was Vader.
We might have gone through there with Vader.
Okay, so that was I feel like when you played the show with Vader, I was there, and that was after Informus was already out. And I feel like you guys opened. You played first, and I just went there and watched you guys and then went home.
Man, we toured with Vader twice around that point in time.
Okay, so it could have been
so that was like really, that was maybe more eye-opening as far as death metal drums is concerned. I mean, Kenny Schock is a fantastic drummer, but he's not a death metal drummer. Going to be on tour with Doc from Vader was, rest in peace, of course. But watching that guy play every night, that was fantastic. That's like there are lessons that I still hold to daily just from those couple of tours.
Okay, wow. What what are some of them? One little lesson here.
Well, it's funny because sorry, I'm shaking out my tea bag. That was a point in time, and I hate bringing this topic up because it's such an old topic, and it's such a back in my day topic, and it was, kind of I used to be able to buy a bag of bread for a nickel, kind of bullshit. Yeah. But you weren't you had to single foot everything, mm-hmm. And for people that don't understand a traditional blast beat, where the kick is going dut, 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 dut. You were supposed to play that with one foot. You weren't supposed to split it up between your, what dot 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 instead of bop 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 bop. And if you did this with 2 feet, it was considered cheating at the time. But I had never seen anybody really do it to the effect that Doc did. And Doc had all this other stuff going on with his playing. Aside from the fact that he just didn't really talk about it that much. You're like, that was awesome. Thank you. And but he would get up there and play these 2-foot blasts, and I'm like, who is making fun of that? That's fantastic. But ever since then, it's like nobody that ever really, minimal exceptions, nobody that ever talked shit on this 2-foot versus 1-foot thing could really get anywhere near the level Doc's playing was on. So he also taught me how to trigger the kick drum and the snare drum separately with a D4.
Okay. Yeah.
I did not stick with that, but it was pretty funny getting the Alesis DM4 lesson from Doc.
All right.
And just watching those guys work as a unit, that was like the first time we really got to get out with what we considered at the time a true proper death metal band.
Mm-hmm.
And we picked up a lot of little tricks from those guys, and like I said, got to do it twice. So
it's awesome.
That's Vader.
So those were like the first couple of tours that you went on with Origin? Vader?
Yeah.
Wow.
No. The first tour we did was 2000, and my God, that was Cephalic Carnage, Exhumed, and an Origin. Cephalic Carnage, Exhumed, and Origin. It was Contamination Tour 2000.
Wow.
And in regional areas, we picked up Deceased, Today is the Day. We picked up Mastodon for a couple of a show, I think, when they were first starting. Yeah, all kinds of interesting little bands. Deeds of Flesh might have been in there once, but that was really cool because that was like a very relapse-centric thing, and it was kind of like what relapse looked like in 2000. Was pretty damn exciting.
Dude, it was the best, man. That's like all I listened to at that point in time, like from the early 2000s. It was just like.
Were you on the relapse message board?
I don't think I wasn't really online a whole lot, so I didn't really delve into message boards and that sort of thing. But yeah, listening to like you guys, Dying Fetus, Cephalic, Uphill Battle. I mean,
Danny
list
Walker
goes on. I feel like I saw Origin with Uphill Battle.
You were, well, wait a minute. I thought, because the story within the Origin camp, about your old band when you guys toured together with Malevolent Creation, those guys still tell stories about that tour, and I thought Uphill Battle was part of that.
No, actually, okay, it's coming back to me now. I have a memory. Uphill Battle did some kind of tour with because I saw Origin. I've seen you guys obviously a ton of times on the tour that we did with them. James was playing drums, but I've seen them with you a number of times too. But I think that was a separate tour. It was Origin and Uphill Battle, and James was playing drums, but you were there, and it was in.
I was there. Yeah, I was there playing with Exhumed.
Okay. Yeah, you were there, and you were like watching James, and I was like, man, that must suck for him, But then I was like, he did pretty good, It was like awesome. And Uphill Battle played, and I think that's how I found out about them, because I was like, whoa, Danny's super sick, and like. Their band was great.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And I think that night I saw you at the bar, like showing somebody how to do. I think you were showing Leon from Impaled how to do like a one-handed roll, like the gravity thing. At the time, I don't think it was called the gravity blast. I was just like, what the hell is that?
I think what happened there was, was that in the Bay Area? Was that in California at the time?
Yeah, it was at the Pound.
Was at the Pound?
Yeah.
I feel like I might have been there practicing with Exhumed or some shit like that, because that would have been around 2000, 2004, I think.
Yeah, it was probably right after Informus came out in 2002, correct?
Informus was 2002, and I was out of the band. I wasn't intentionally out of the band, but I was taking a break as I thought I was doing at that point in time.
Okay.
I'm gonna go take a break, and it didn't quite go that way, and I ended up being out of the band shortly after the start of 2003.
Mm-hmm. So you just decided to take a break because you didn't want to tour?
We were having a rough time. We were out on tour, and we went out with this booking company, and who he shall rename nameless. Remain nameless.
Rename nameless.
Remain nameless. And it sucked, man, because we were out with Immolation and this Australian band, I can't quite remember the name off the top of my head. I'm having a real hard time remembering things, but we were
You
out
and
with
Naveen
Immolation.
both.
We were out for like 5 weeks. Oh, the Berserker. And
Berserker.
at the end of the tour, we had like 3 weeks of basically club dates, headlining club dates, and it was right before Christmas, and we weren't making any money, and we had a creeping suspicion that the booking agent wasn't paying us money because every night was a deposit night, and we didn't talk about that right now. But
classic.
Yeah, right. And and nobody was getting along, and it really sucked. And everybody got home and was just kind of like, fuck off. And everybody went home, and we were starting to talk about this other tour. I didn't like the idea of it, and then I just decided, okay, I'm gonna go. I need a break. I need to step out of the band for a bit, and I need to go. And incidentally, I'm gonna go to upstate New York and help Skinless write the new Skinless record, and then I'll come back at some point in time.
Got it.
And that's just I just kind of launched that at them, and they're like, okay. And then shortly after, without hearing much from me, they decided, okay, let's find a drummer. And that sucked for me, but at the same time, I understand why, because I wasn't doing it the right way either. So
yeah, of course, that's kind of how it goes, though. I mean, that type of shit is what the monetary struggles, the being on tour for weeks on end and not really playing good shows and not making any money, that can lead people to want to make that move. And I totally understand why you would do that.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And for anyone who doesn't know, the thing that you're talking about with booking agents taking every night's a deposit night. So some nights when we are on tour, our booking agent will get a deposit, like they'll be given our guarantees to go toward our booking fee at the end of the tour. So if you're dealing with a good agent, they just take the fees that they're owed and all is well. But if you're dealing with a crappy agent, then they will screw you out of money if you're in that kind of position.
Correct. And the booking agent we have right now, he's wonderful. And, but they always do seem to take, it's kind of like taxes. If you claim 0 on your W-2, and at the end of the year, you get that big chunk of cash at the end if you've done your taxes right. So that's kind of what they always take. I'm like, really? They're taking that much? Like all of a sudden our guarantee's chopped in half.
Yeah.
And it's being sent somewhere else. So, but it's like that ends up being one of the payoffs at the end of the tour. And it usually comes about a month later after they've paid everything, and then we get the rest of what's left. I'm like, oh, cool. More money.
It's a nice little surprise. So
it is.
So James is the only other drummer who is in Origin. Is that correct?
George Fluke was the original drummer.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay, so you joined after George. How many years after the band? So Paul started the band with?
Paul started the band with Jeremy.
Mm-hmm.
Jeremy. Okay, so Paul Ryan and vocalist Mark Manning, Jeremy Turner, and Clinton Applehands, which are both in Unmerciful. So that's what the band started with, and George Fluke was playing drums, and he's actually the guy that came up with the one-handed roll concept. If you listen to the first demo, or the demo, coming into existence, and I think he picked that up from Dennis Chambers. I think Dennis Chambers was futzing around with it on a drum clinic at one point in time, and the story goes, Paul would tease George, and he would say, "You can never blast as fast as I could pick," and one day George calls up and says, "Yes, I can. I think I can do this." And he came to practice and had the one-handed roll thing down.
Okay. Wow. Because I wanted to ask you about that because it's clearly on that demo, the coming into existence. He's doing the gravity blast thing. Although I didn't know that's what it was called. Did you guys call it that? You didn't call it that, right?
I called it the gravity drive. I thought I was being cute because I was ripping off the movie Event Horizon. And because I don't know if you guys have seen that movie or not.
Yeah, I have. Great movie.
So he talks about, he takes a sheet of paper and he draws an A and a B on it. And they're like, what's the fastest? And the fastest, direction between from A to B. He goes, no. And he folds a piece of paper in half and he puts the pen through it and he goes, it's through. So it folds space-time. And I'm like, you know what? Here's what the one-handed roll does: is you draw out a blast beat in notation, and then you fold it in half, and it's doubled. And there you go. It's the gravity drive. And
Okay.
Whoa.
somebody else changed. I don't know who called it gravity blast, but after a while, they're just kind of like, gravity drive. That's fucking stupid. Why am I naming this thing? It's just a one-handed roll.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
and then
So you
eventually it
guys
started
named it.
coming back to me as gravity blast, and that just sounds like some kind of a bong rip or a weed thing.
True.
It does.
True. Wow. So you actually coined the term. I didn't know.
Loosely.
Yeah. Okay. How do you feel about that?
The one-handed roll, I struggle with it because it's very stiff. There's a lot of elbow grease that goes into that move, especially with how fast we play these days in comparison to how fast we played 15, 20 years ago. Like on the first and second records, nothing got up over 220, 230 really, so it was manageable. But now that we're up and over 250 on the albums and up to who knows where live,
right.
It's just, and then it's tough because you're competing. You got such a small stroke on an acoustic snare drum against a kick trigger.
Yeah.
Right.
Against walls of amplification and a barking, frothing vocalist, and it's just like, it makes sense to people who know it's there. To other people, he's like, why did the snare drum disappear, and why is his arm in a weird position? So,
yeah, I mean, if the snare is super tight, cranked, you can hear it pretty well. I mean, you can hear the gravities pretty well. Whenever I saw you guys, I would hear it, no problem.
One of the things I did, I switched to a metal snare. I'm like, as far as live stuff is concerned now, I'm like, I use a cast steel snare with Origin these days, and it's just 14 by 5, and it's just like, super loud.
Yeah, I remember that old snare you had. You had like a 14. It was really deep. It was like an old Tama, I think. It was brown.
Oh, it's a Sonar. That's a Sonar signature.
Okay.
It's like a HLD something, and that's a 12-ply beach shell with inner and outer Babinga plies. That's what that is.
Okay. I always remember you playing that.
It's a nice drum. It sits in my studio now. It does not go out.
That's smart. That's a smart move. Yeah, smart move.
So you joined, George was in the band playing drums, and you joined how long after that?
That I'm a little, I don't know. It must have been a couple of months after I think he just kind of gave him the fade and just stopped returning phone calls and all that stuff, or was too busy for rehearsal. And I had just been released from Angel Corpse, and so I was just kind of bouncing around the scene in a couple of different bands, and I ran into Paul and Jeremy at a 6 Feet Under show in Topeka, Kansas.
Okay.
And this was before 6 Feet Under was big, and it was grim, man. It was like 5 people at the show. So I just ended up sitting at the bar, and Paul comes up to me and goes, "I know who you are, and I need a drummer." And I'm like, "You're weird." He just walks right up to me and just starts talking, and I'm like, who's this guy? And Jeremy was right behind him, and here's my demo. I'm like, took it home and eventually listened to it and was blown the fuck away. I'm like, man, this is crazy. What is happening? What's the snare drum doing? Why does it? There's no guitar solos. And I was impressed, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna join that band. And there you go. Jeremy had me out to his place, and I auditioned with Jeremy. And then I'd say about a couple weeks later, Jeremy and Paul and Mark came out to my rehearsal studio because we were about a half an hour away from each other at the time. So they came out, and we had our first rehearsals, and rest is gravy, right?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, so I know that you were in Angel Corpse before Origin. Was there anything else before that, or how did you get into being a death metal drummer?
That's a good question. I want to know that.
I saw Dave Koros playing for Malevolent Creation when they were doing the Eternal tour. I had joined a band in Kansas called Malicious Intent, and it had some form of blast beats, that on the snare drum, and I was just like, kind of sounds like Morbid Angel, so I went for that and was just sort of fumbling about, and then we all went out and saw Malevolent Creation play, and I knew that this guy Dave was playing drums on this album, and that's the first time I actually got to watch a death metal drummer up close. So watching that guy and having a lot of things, because it doesn't look the way it sounds. It looks like sounds like this guy is murdering the drums. But then you watch Dave play, for anybody that is familiar, a lot of this podcast is going to be from 15 years back, folks.
Don't worry, I'm always going the back in my day thing. I had to walk to school. That's like kind of the token. That's my thing.
You're also one person who Naveen and I were like, all right, with John, we're going to do the take me back. Take me back to when you started, what brought you into death metal drums, you know? It's like, I want to hear that from you.
Basically a series of bands in Kansas City, and, you just sit around. You heard of this band, you heard of this band, you heard of this band, you like this band. Like, my father was a jazz musician, so I could have gone that way, but I didn't because I ended up hearing Iron Maiden and Judas Priest and King Diamond, and I ended up hearing Slayer, and I ended up hearing all those bands. I was just, ooh. But as you just kind of like joined the little band and slightly, just never did anything other than some club shows, but eventually got a call. Well, no, I sat in for this band and just did some covers at a bar one night. We just like Metallica, Anthrax, and like White Zombie covers, I think. And out of nowhere, I got a call from this guy, and this is Gene Palabiki, and he's like, I have this band called Angel Corpse, and we heard that you can play blast beats and that you're a death metal drummer. I'm like, yeah. So I like went out there that night. I went to his place that night and hung out with them, and like, what kind of caught my attention about that was their vocalist / bass player was Pete from Order from Chaos, which was a band in KC. It was a name that I had heard multiple times. I'm like, oh, I've heard of those guys. And so got into Angel Corpse around 96, 95 even. That first album came out in 96. We did a couple of EPs, and we did the second record. And that was... The second record, Exterminate, was the make you laugh, make you cry, make you wish you were never born, make you happy that you draw breath and you're alive, the world's wonderful, oh my god, this is painful, like death metal origin story.
Yeah.
Because at that point in time, when it was like, yeah, we got signed to Osmos, and we got down to Florida to go record the second record at Morrisound. So we're going to record the second record at Morrisound. And I'm like, oh, shit. So we go down there, and we drive all night from KC to Florida. We get down there, and the first place we go, I think the first place we went was Antar Coates' house. Antar already had Diabolic going at the time. So we stopped at his place, and then we're like, okay, well, where are we going to sleep? So we end up going to Lee Harrison's house for Monstrosity, to double back to the tour. I can't wait to talk to him about this stuff on tour, but we're going to go by and see Monstrosity rehearse. So this is back when you would just go to your friends' band's rehearsals and sit and watch.
Oh, yeah.
Love that.
Mm-hmm.
You remember that? I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
hell yeah, I remember that. No one does that anymore.
Yeah.
It's not a thing.
Actually, we had Drew here the other time.
Okay, we had him here one time. So we got drunk, and then at 2 a.m. we were like,
come over.
Yeah,
dude.
come over. But other than that, no one is ever around for our practices. I don't know if you guys do it like that, but...
Well, I mean, I don't know, but it can't happen for us because we've already been on tour. We've already done records. We're already well into our careers. But like, when like this like shit, I wasn't even 21 yet. I might have been 19. And all of a sudden I'm watching Monstrosity rehearse. And at that time, Kelly Conlon was playing bass for Monstrosity. I'm like, you're Kelly Condon. You played on Death Symbolic. And he's like, yes. And I'm like, shit. And then we're like, okay, well, we're going to go sleep at George Corpse Grinder's house. I was just, shit. And so before I even got into the recording studio, I'm at Corpse Grinder's house, and all the Cannibal Corpse guys are over there. They're playing Madden. And Tony Laureano is there hanging out. A couple of the guys from Monstrosity. And I'm just 19 years old. I don't know anything. And I'm surrounded by all of the current death metal royalty. And yeah, so that was the nice part.
And so how did it go recording at Morristown? What was that like? That seems like a bucket list.
It's the worst.
When you're 19. When you're 19. Insane.
So what was bad about it?
Well, we were booked in Studio B, and at that Morristown there was 3 rooms. It was A, B, and C, I believe. There was the big room was A. Obviously, the little room was B, and the little room was C, and it was more of like just a little mastering studio. But I get into Studio B, and like all of a sudden, I hear this dude behind me goes, "Hey man, this is where I record the Terrorizer album." And I turn around, and it's fucking Pete Sandoval, and I'm like, "Hi, Pete."
Damn.
So I'm setting up my drums, and Pete Sandoval's there. And this is where I come to realize that Morbid Angel is in Studio A mixing Formulas Fatal to the Flesh.
Whoa.
So we're tracking Exterminate in B, and Morbid is in A with Tom Morris. We got Jim Morris. Morbid's got Tom Morris. And so the entire 2 weeks that I'm down there, it's like Morbid Angel is there. The Cannibal Corpse guys are coming in and out. Everybody that's anybody in death metal, or anybody that's cool with Morbid Angel, is in and out of the studio to check out what the new Morbid is sounding like. And this is the first time we saw Steve Tucker. So this is how it goes all the way back to my new band, Malefic Throne.
Okay.
With Gene and Steve. This is how that band goes all the way back there. And the recording was awful because I didn't know how to play that stuff, in a proper studio with really good mics and an actual engineer. And the editing was, I've never seen drums edited before, and they edited my drums so they sound nice, and I was heartbroken over the thing.
Is that Exterminate that you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I have that album actually on vinyl.
And you can hear it because my hands were fine, but my feet were shot. I just didn't know. So you hear all this cool flow going on with the hands, but then the kicks are like,
Yeah.
So that was rough. And that, I think, I got back home, and then I was kind of just bummed about the damn thing. I wasn't showing up to rehearsal, and that was when they told me that Tony was going to join the band, and that was that for Angel Corpse.
Okay.
So there you go.
And then Origin came.
I like Origin way more, so it's a...
Origin stories from Origin drummer.
Honestly, I only knew about Angel Corpse because you were in the band. So I went backwards. I was like, oh, he was in this other band. I'm going to check it out. That's kind of...
Well, I think a lot of people know about Angel Corpse because you were in the band.
Angel Corpse I really dig Angel Corpse because Angel Corpse kind of came from that old... It was like a crossbreed of old Tampa death metal and like...
Definitely.
Evil German thrash metal. It was a crossbreed between Possessed and Morbid Angel, sort of. So the only thing that really bugs me about Angel Corpse these days is that I never really got to do that material justice live. And there's no plan for that to happen. There's some personalities in that band that it can't happen, I guess. But closest I can get is Malefic Throne, so I'm excited to get out and do shit with that band.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay.
Are you guys going to tour and play shows and do all of that?
Oh, we are signing a record contract,
awesome.
And we're going to record a full length.
Okay.
The EP is out there. You can find it on Hell's Headbangers.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I haven't listened to that yet. I need to check that out.
Neither have I. I'm excited to listen to it.
Yeah.
It's it sounds like what the three of us would sound like, I think.
Okay.
Hell yeah.
So,
Did you play one of the songs when you went to Meinl and you did those? You did like a bunch of Origin songs. Okay, and then you played a couple other songs. Okay, that makes sense.
To the Storm of Steel was an Angel Corp song from Exterminate, and my friend Jeff Leifer, who is the guitarist for a band I did a while back called Crater, and he did all the guitars for that. And yeah, it seemed to be pretty well received. It was a lot of fun playing that because that kind of was like being able to do that era of my career justice and like actually put it out there saying this is what it was supposed to sound like. So
okay.
Yeah, and those videos are awesome as well.
Dude, I have worn those videos out on YouTube, and I watch them all the time. Like when they first came out, I was like,
I'm just so glad they had you.
Oh my God. Yeah, and I even thanked Chris. I was like, thank you. Chris is the rep from Meinl who puts those videos together, for those of you who don't know. But we moved to Nashville, so I see him kind of a lot more than I used to. And I was like, dude, thank you so much for like having John out here, because you know, a lot of drum companies don't really showcase like death metal, you know what I mean? And I was just like, thank you so much for doing that, you know, and having me obviously, but
that was amazing. It's like,
yeah, so sick.
I'm like, oh, so this is what artists probably, I mean, endorsements aren't what they used to be anymore. You know, I think back when the music industry had a lot more money, you know, there was a much stronger presence for clinics, you know, at music stores and all that kind of stuff. And there was just a lot more music events and all that. You had Summer NAMM and Winter NAMM. You had PASIC. You still have PASIC, I think, but like a lot more music shows.
Yeah,
that were going on. Collective used to do events, and brewers like we, you know, and I that's how I got into those classic custom dark.
Okay.
Was Chris was like, what is your cymbal setup? And I was just like, it's kind of a hodgepodge, you know, because I had a lot of different Meinls on the kit at the time, but I had MB20 rides, and then I had like Soundcaster custom crashes, but then I had extreme classic hi-hats, and then like Soundcaster custom hats over here. I'm like, what do you think is a good setup that, you know, death metal fans will be into? I kind of like the classic customs dark, and he goes, that's a great idea. And so, yeah, they provided that set of cymbals for those videos, and I ended up taking them home. I'm like, I want these cymbals, and so
they sound really good.
And then Naveen copied you. So.
Naveen didn't copy me. But
I've been copying you for 20 years. So.
Oh, shush.
Actually, the first time I saw anybody do doubles on the kick was you. And that was like way later on. It was like when you rejoined Origin. You guys played at like actually, this is kind of a funny story. You guys played at one of those like kind of more DIY like warehouses in Oakland. And you were setting up to play, and you were like doing the doubles, and I was like, what the fuck's going on there? Like because it sounded like you're just doing singles, but the triggers are going, you know, and it was so mind blowing. And then the power went off. And
what is it with the power going off in Oakland? That happened to us
so power cut out, and like, it was sick because you were just playing drums for like a while with no PA on. Because the power was out. And so I was just like, this is sick. And I just like watched you play for a while. And I actually got kicked out of that show. Yeah, I got thrown out.
Was that really big venue in Oakland? And it was a big room, right?
Yeah, they had...
It's called like Oakland Warehouse or something.
Yeah, for a while they had like a different venue every other week. It was really weird. There was like this place called Slaughterhouse. Then there was like... I don't know what I couldn't tell you what that place was called, but
yeah, the double strokes thing. Boy,
so yeah, you're the first guy I see.
How did you learn to do them? I mean,
that technique people love it or hate it.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like that's just the evolution in drums. Now that you're talking about the single kick blast, it's like, okay, then people hated triggers.
Yep.
I don't know what they hated in the meantime. I'm not a drummer, but now they hate doubles. You love or hate doubles because it's cheating.
Yep.
The cheating thing. I'm actually, that's my recent goal that I've given myself is that my single foot blast is going to work. Damn it. It's going to I can get to about 220 comfortably, but I want that
Jesus.
I want that upper BPM, like I want that George Coleus shit.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to that's way cooler. I'm not going to lie. It's way cooler.
It's cool. It is fucking cool.
It's really cool.
I figured out a lot of cool ways to make the 2-foot thing work, because I like how it's symmetry, and you can do a lot of it. You could do a lot of shit with it that isn't necessarily blast oriented, but blast adjacent, I guess. But the double strokes thing happened right before Antithesis, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Because Paul started sending me these guitar riffs, and it was just, I had rejoined the band, and we went out on tour, and came back home, and I did another Angel Corpse record, and and I was on the Derek Roddy message board a lot, if you remember that one.
I actually do remember that one. I didn't really go on it very much. I just knew that was like the death metal hangout before there was like Facebook and all that stuff.
It was, man. It's like you had your library card, and you went to the library, and you clocked your half an hour of internet time. You played on the internet, and it kicked you off, and you went back home and did something else.
Yeah. Way better, by the way.
Maybe. But, no. You know what? My friend Jim, he goes, come over. You got to watch this video. He had this video, this VHS video of this drummer named Joe Stronczyk. And it was called the Joe Stronczyk Ballistic Double Bass Method.
I gotta look that up.
I'm like, go on, let's have it. And he's like, I'm gonna teach you how to play heel-toe double strokes on the bass drum pedals. And all we would do is just drink beers and smoke a lot of weed and put on Christian records. And but so we decided to watch this guy, and he's talking about this Gibraltar pedal. I think it was called the Gibraltar some Gibraltar pedal. But what this Gibraltar pedal could do, I think it was one of the first pedals where you could adjust the foot height and the beater height independently. And he goes, he set it up all wacky, and he started doing this, and he's basically playing singles and doubles and like paradiddles. None of it was that fast, but like the idea, and we're just laughing at it. They were like, what a fucking dork.
Yep, that's how it is. Those VHS drummer tapes.
Sure enough, a few years later when Paul starts, I think he had sent me Aftermath. I think it was like the first time I had heard his guitar demo for Aftermath, which is the song that opens the Antithesis album, and I was like, God damn it. I'm like, how the fuck am I going to keep up with that? And I had this little pedal set up in my apartment, and I don't even know what I was thinking, but I accidentally just went, bum.
Yeah.
And the beater went thunk, thunk. I was just like, the Joe got that ballistic thing.
Yeah.
And like, I gotta go. And I'm like, my girlfriend at the time, she was like, that's stupid. You're going to do that VHS thing? I'm like, yeah. And I grabbed my pedals and I went to the rehearsal room, and that started a 3-week run that I was there Monday through Friday for 3 hours just trying to get that to work, and it eventually worked.
Wow.
And
because the way
bouncing that off of a couple of other guys on the Roddy message board, it just kind of went from there.
Mm-hmm. Because the way that you do it, like from what I can tell, it's not really like a heel toe per se. You're not like striking it with your heel and then the ball. And that's how I do it too. It's kind of like a pressure thing.
It is. It's like an implied heel, or if anything, it's like
you slam your heel down.
And a pop.
Yeah.
And but it started out as heel toe. So it started out as boom boom, but like I shouldn't be doing this, guys, but
I think you should. This is the drummer episode.
Definitely.
But my foot had to be way up in here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I do not use these pedals on stage. And so I was hitting the heel somewhere in here, and the toes were up in the drive shaft, in the strap. And so I eventually just kind of started coming down to where I was getting this sort of like flat pop thing.
Yep, exactly.
It's almost like the one-handed roll for your feet.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true. I actually taught a guy how to do it last week. And, yeah. It's kind of like you slam your heel down. That's kind of what I was telling him. And he learned it in one lesson. I was pretty impressed.
At first, like a lot of these techniques, you start with really big, wonky movements, and eventually you hone that. But the problem with that technique is like everybody kind of took it as the slam it down and the beater goes,
Yeah.
And so everybody is using this really weird kind of like pressure sort of mush and getting this little dribble, and which is why the question I get the most from people is, how do I set up triggers for the double strokes? Or how do I set up pedals for the double strokes and that kind of a thing? And I'm like, practice double strokes on the pedals without like specific settings.
Yeah.
Use neutral pedals, crank up the spring tension, and go from there.
Yeah.
Because the idea, as far as I am concerned, the idea is to develop the second stroke.
Yeah.
1 E and ah.
Yeah.
Or and so there's a handful of exercises that I teach people to get that second note to actually hit, rather than it just be bunk bunk.
Yeah.
Right.
So when you do it now, the second hit is like more audible than it was when you first started.
Yes, after years and years of like, what it was is like the first tour I went out, it didn't work very well. It was awful.
Yeah.
Because I hadn't really done much with it other than just try and make a lot of fast notes happen. It worked in the studio for Antithesis, but like the first tour out with Antithesis, it was really bad. So I had to, after that, I came back home and really tried to slow it down. Yeah. And through slowing it down and getting it down to certain BPMs and just trying to emulate what really good single strokes sounded like, I was able to get that separation between those two notes to, and just get that technique so the beater can go, really, really fast. And so, I'm getting a lot more open stroke, proper open double strokes with it over the past, 6 years or so from when I started doing it.
Yeah, I think actually me and Cheney went and saw Origin in LA, like when we lived down there. And I think I talked to you for a little bit, and you were telling me that same thing. You were like, "Yeah, this is the," like you said like, "Yeah, the first tour I did it on, it kind of sucked, and then after that, it was like pretty good." I kind of got lucky because I started doing it like right at the beginning of 2020, and then we didn't tour obviously for like 2 years. Mm-hmm. So I just practiced it at home for like 2 years. So when we went on our first tour, like the first couple shows were a little bit shitty, but then Spencer was like, you got to use an actual Roland trigger on your kick. You got to get rid of those pedal triggers. And once I switched to the Roland, it was like just way like double bass unlocked.
I'll tell you, man, I can't get the only pedal triggers I was ever able to make work were the on triggers.
Okay, I've never tried those.
Those are nice. I broke the foot blasters. I broke the E kits. I broke the E3s. Oh, the E3s I could never get the E3s to work. But, I am, it's like, depending on what I'm doing, I will either use the on triggers or I will use the RTK 30.
Yeah. Just gotta use that.
And the TM2. And those are my bulletproof go-to setups.
Yep.
But like I've got a pair of Demon drives that have trick laser triggers on them.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah,
what do you think of
those?
What do you think of those? I know they're expensive, and you have to plug them in.
Laser triggers, and you have to plug them in. Yeah, you need 2 separate
that's insane.
10-volt outlets for those things.
Oh God,
ridiculous. Yeah, it's crazy. I've tried a bunch of pedal triggers, and yeah, it's always it's just not something that I mean, like compare because I was thinking like I just suck at doubles, and I'm not like the greatest at them. I can do it for our band with the parts that I've written, but like I said, once I switched over to that, I used Spencer's trigger, and I was just like, dude, this is like I don't suck after all. Wow, look at that.
Man, what was I gonna say? There was something I was gonna say. Oh yeah, the problem I have with the pedal triggers is unless you're, some venues you're on a flat, wooden surface, and then the next day you're on a flat concrete surface, and then the next day you're on this cheesy drum riser that's all wobbly, and there's that relationship between your bass drum pedal and your kick drum. Yeah. And every time you hit that bass drum pedal, there's going to be a little bit of flex or no flex or a lot of flex. And if there's a lot of flex, then you can forget that pedal trigger setup that you dialed in 3 days ago because it's going to be completely gone.
Yeah.
And then you have to get on your hands and knees underneath the snare drum and adjust the thing. It's a little bit problematic for me. I'm sure there's somebody out there that has a much better method. Trust me.
Yeah, I don't know. People use them, but I just can't get it to work.
So far, the on triggers have been the most easy to deal with and the most, I don't know, they just seem a bit beefier.
Like I can get them dialed in at home to be pretty good, but yeah, like you said, once you go on the road, it's too many variables. And it's cool to just plug in one trigger and not have to plug 2 in because I'm fucking lazy.
Well, I've been experimenting with 2 bass drums lately, so actually the last Origin tour I did was on 2 bass drums.
So that probably works better for doing the doubles, right? Like 2 RTK30s is probably like legit as fuck, I would imagine.
Well, then you got to deal with crosstalk, Yeah. So, because now you got 2 triggers. You got one here and you got one here, or is it here, or is it down there, or whichever. Yeah. And depending on where the triggers are is going to depend on how your crosstalk is going to, and then your crosstalk is another variable that's in with your gain and your decay or whatever they call it on the rolling machines these days. But tech talk.
I know. Right. I usually when people ask questions like this on the podcast, which we will get into some questions, people we have a live. This is actually live on Twitch right now, and people can chime in on our Discord and ask questions. But when they ask
what are you talking about?
When they ask super nerdy drum questions, I'm usually like, man, this is boring. Let's skip it.
They're all going to be really excited about this episode because that's all it is.
And I was like, if we're having freaking John Longstreth on drum nerd episode, no problem. Let's go.
So what pedals do you use? What do you think are the best pedals for this method that you're talking about?
I mean, I've used my technique on a lot of different pedals, including like a pair of blue strap pearl eliminators. I couldn't believe I made that work, but I snapped a heel block at like my second Hate Eternal practice. And, like, fuck, man, my fucking $2,000 European bass drum pedals just snapped on me, and Eric Rattan is just like, what the fuck's that all about?
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. And he goes, well, I got Jade's old pedals. You can use those. I'm like, okay. And it worked, and my girlfriend at the time was able to ship my old Axes to me. And I used those, but I've made it work on everything. My favorite pedals are the Pearl Demon drives. Mm-hmm. And I like them because I've never broken them.
Yeah.
I've worn things out on them. I've made the bearings go clackety clack after a couple of tours, and I've had a spring or two snap on me, but I've never broken those pedals. I've never broken a drive shaft. I've never broken any heel blocks. I've never broken anything on them, and they kind of sit nicely in between super light and fluttery like the Axis pedals, and then super like stompy, powerful, like almost like Iron Cobra Drum Workshop chain drive pedals. So they got kind of a nice middle power band and a whole ton of adjustments. You can kind of make them do anything.
Yeah, and they don't have like a lot of pedals that I've noticed when drum companies make pedals, they usually have like a bulky heel block after the pedal board. And that was kind of why I stopped using the Tama pedals, because I started doing the doubles and I was thinking, oh, this is kind of in the way. But I don't know, in hindsight, I was doing the doubles pretty good just with the Tamas, no problem. And then I started using Axis.
Well, I think what you're saying is valid about the Axis.
You should be able to do it.
Pedals are very light and fluttery, and even me, I am not very good at playing double bass, but getting on Axis pedals, I was way better than playing your Tama.
I think it's a lot smoother, but I think kind of like what you're saying, you should probably be able to make it work on anything. The other stuff's just kind of like icing on the cake.
The Axis pedals, that was fun. I remember when Axis first appeared in Kansas City, and I don't know how I had like an extra $700 because I never had money as a kid. But these Axis pedals came into the shop, and it's, in Kansas City we have this drum shop called Explorers Percussion, and he's been there forever, and he's still there, and he's still thriving and kicking ass. And the Axis pedals came in. I'm like, what is that? That looks like an Erector set and all that. And he goes, this is Axis. And it's like, this is before the longboard, so it still had the heel platform at the back of it.
Mm-hmm.
But ball bearings everywhere and variable drive lever, and had this thing called the waggle factor, which was you would like boing, 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 and it would just go.
Yeah.
And so I bought them, hated them, sold them, traded them in for a pair of Iron Cobras. Jesus. And then someone said, oh no, the Axis pedal, it's upside down. You have to, it's 20% you, 30% you, 70% the pedal. As to where, these older chain drive pedals, you were supposed to run on them like the old thrash metal drummers. They would just run on their pedals and that full leg stomp brutality. And so after watching Dave Koros again, he's just like, yeah, you just have to kind of learn how to sit back a little bit and sort of like dribble almost. And I was watching him play, and he's getting all this beater distance and all of this speed, and he's not killing himself. So I was just like, shit. So I went back to Explorers Percussion, traded in my Iron Cobras to try and get my Axis pedals back, and that's how my Axis thing started. And yeah,
I remember like at that time, Origin, like Informus era, it was like every death metal drummer. It was not a question. You had to have an Axis, or you were just
I remember
you were whack if you didn't have one.
Yeah,
we all got that notion from Pete Sandoval and Dave Koros, because those are the two guys that first like you started using those pedals. Those were the guys that, and that was the funny thing, because like the Axis pedal was originally designed as a jazz pedal, like a really light, easy pedal, and Daryl just wanted it to be super smooth and kind of move on its own. And all these death metal guys started coming after him, and he was so funny because Daryl Johnston, the guy that invented Axis, he would come out to the shows and he'd just be like, well, man, this band is really neat because you guys can just stop on a dime. What do you say about Origin? He goes, you just start and then you just stop, and it's just and he just I don't think he likes the music, but he's an engineer, so he had so much fun just looking at what we do and just geeking out on the detail.
Yeah.
So he just loved that. And once he was out of the company, I just kind of started to, I don't know any, so. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I actually just got, I sold my Axis pedal, or no, it got stolen when I was in Animals as Leaders. And then I kind of didn't really want to use it anyway, because I was in Animals as Leaders and I was just playing more simple stuff on the kick. So I went back to using like a DW, and then, recently getting more back into wanting to play fast and learning the doubles and stuff. I met the new Axis rep in LA, and he's really cool. So I'm
that American, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I met him recently. He's a nice guy.
Yeah, he's really cool. So he hooked your boy up. So I'm ripping those. I like it. I'm into it. And honestly, people say like You can actually hit really hard with Axis pedals. He gave me the lighter beaters, but then there's also, they started making like these big beaters that probably weigh as much as a 9,000 beater. And I had those on there, and you can freaking hit super hard. Like
those big ones you're talking about,
yeah.
I believe are like a reboot of the OG Axis pedal.
Okay.
Because the Marksman beaters came out pretty quickly. There was these little guy, kind of cone looking.
That's ones.
But the original ones were like big, like
it's just like that. Yep.
You know?
It's just like that. They're huge.
You know. And I remember those things being really fucking heavy. Yeah, I'm not surprised. That's cool.
And then they also made this thing where you can have because part of the problem with Axis is like the left beater was so far over to the left, but they have this thing now that like you put on the bass drum and it resets it. Yeah. And it's actually really cool. So the beaters both hit in the same spot in relation to the kick. And it's really cool. I'm into it. I like it.
Yeah, and it just kind of pops on, right? You
just does.
Like, put your bass drum on the pedal.
Yeah.
No, I love Axis. It's such. I mean, Chuck and Karen and Daryl were like really cool and really good to me, but I just couldn't. I kept breaking them, and I couldn't get the parts quickly enough, and it was becoming a bit of a liability. So that's the thing. Pearl's really good to me these days, so I'm in good hands.
Yeah, so you use the Pearl Demon drives right now?
Yeah, I've been using those for a long time. I got out of there for a little bit, went, tried a couple of other things, and just started shedding parts. A lot of these boutique pedals are really, really awesome, and like the ideas are really great, but a lot of those ideas aren't quite tested. And so cool, you get prototype pieces, but these prototype pieces haven't been tested, and you can't be snapping those parts. They might make it through rehearsal, but then you get a week into the tour and something goes on. You're like, oh no. Totally. And then a lot of times they can't get the parts to you fast enough because it's a small company. So it's nothing against the people behind these products, and it's nothing against the products themselves. They're all really wonderful. Like all these companies. Whoa, what do you like? You like this company? You like this company? You like this company? It doesn't matter. They're all great. It's just if I break it, which I probably will, so I'm a little limited.
I mean, that was my huge thing with like being playing like a Tama or like a mainstream drum company, because they just make them to not break. So
and you can get their parts virtually anywhere that you are on the planet.
Store.
And that happens with all of the boutique guitars and basses and everything. Any boutique instrument, if something breaks, which it seems to break more often when you get those type of instruments.
Yeah, it's gonna break.
It's hard for them to send those pieces out to you on tour when you're moving every day as quickly as you need it. So it's just like you're saying, all of that shit can be a liability.
Yeah, it matters.
So
a lot of that stuff makes perfect sense if you can, like, I only have the room to carry 2 sets of pedals. So and it's an awesome kind of thing where if you have 3 or 4 months to work on an album that doesn't involve leaving or doing anything, you can just set up and you can just use these boutique pieces of gear nicely in a studio setting or in a controlled setting. But a lot of times, like, I snapped a floorboard of a pedal, the floorboard in half because there was a slight kind of like one of these things in stage, and the pedal was just sort of sitting on it, and I'm cranking down on it, and like the next day I look at it and my floorboard of the pedal was a little bit bent. And sure enough, that was the day that it popped in Italy, on stage with Hate Eternal.
Oh my God!
You can't get anything in Italy. Forget about that. Dude, everywhere's closed.
George Colias tossed me one of his backup Axis pedal. So I had his Axis pedal on my right, and I had my other pedal on my left. Playing with 2 separate pedals, it was a little strange. But the next day in Rome, actually, there was some guy at the venue that just had this piece of steel that just zip, 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 and it held for the rest of the tour.
Oh, there you go. That's what
that was actually That was actually Scott Walker, the original drummer of Vitriol, that was able to fix that pedal.
Oh, word.
So
That's awesome. Shout out Scott, saving drummers' lives on that.
Scott.
So how did the Hate Eternal thing come about?
Man, Origin tour. Origin was on tour with Vader way back in 2001, I think, and somehow we ended up at Eric Rattan's old studio that he had. It was like the first incarnation of Mana, I believe. It wasn't Mana yet, but he had his own studio, and he had it in a storage unit. And it was fascinating. He had built walls up in this storage unit, and he had this little control room and this little one room and all that. And I remember meeting him and hanging out and listening to like the rough mixes of King of All Kings. Oh, shit. Derek who? What? And the guy from the Malevolent Creation record. That guy? Cool. And we ended up getting out on tour with Hate Eternal in 2002. So that tour was like the first the tour that Origin was just like really got to understand what big boy death metal was. And it was Origin, Hate Eternal, Nile, and Arch Enemy.
Damn.
And Arch Enemy it was the first Arch Enemy tour with Angela singing, and so it was huge. So yeah, every night hung out with Derek Roddy and Eric, and just got to be friends with those guys. And Eric and I stayed in touch over the years. You know, Origin Hate Eternal toured again in 2011, 12 maybe, with Vital Remains, and just it kept coming. And just like he called me right before Chasen joined, and we were talking about it for a minute, but I think I had something going on, so Chasen got in there and was out of there. Hannes got in there, and Hannes got caught up in something else. He got another gig or something like that, and so Eric called me and goes, "Let's finally go," and I'm like, "Yes, let's finally go." And there you go.
And
I've
then
done 2 tours with them so far.
So you're currently playing with Hate Eternal then?
Yes,
I
I will be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Eric's got his plate full right now with Cannibal Corpse,
right.
as one would. So when it's ready,
that's awesome.
When it's time, I'm there.
I look forward to the day that we get to see you with Hate Eternal.
I know that's gonna be.
Hate Eternal rules.
It's an honor, man. I get to work with one of the greats.
Yeah,
man, that guy was like got there right before Domination was released. Wrote half of Domination. Was part of Morbid Angel at their height,
which is my favorite Morbid Angel record, Domination.
Dude, every time I go to his studio, he's got that Gibson Explorer. If you open the inlay for Domination, he's playing a Gibson Explorer with a Floyd. This is when like Morbid Angel was a Gibson band. Like Trey had a Flying V and Eric had the Explorer, and that Explorer is just hanging on his wall. I'll just sit underneath the Explorer. Tell me the story.
Right. But, if that Explorer could talk.
That's awesome.
If it can, it roars.
True that. Yeah, that's amazing. Incredible that you're playing with them. But so how did you end up rejoining Origin?
Yeah.
I missed them.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a good fit. When you weren't in the band, I was like, "What? How's that?"
Yeah.
Granted,
really? James is a good drummer.
Yeah.
Like we saw James with Unmerciful a few years ago. He's a sick drummer.
Yeah.
I mean, and he did all that in just. I remember when they were searching for a new drummer, and I called Paul on it. I'm like, "What the fuck, man?" He goes, "You're not here. What the fuck? What am I gonna do?" And I'm like, "Fuck you, I'm out," or something like that. And
so as it goes.
And after a while, James Lee at the time, he goes, "I guess we're hiring James King," and I thought that was awesome. When I first heard they're going to hire James King, I thought it was really cool because James King was a guitar player first.
Yeah,
and I think he was the original guitarist of Unmerciful. Actually, I think him and Clinton were playing guitar together, and he played an SG. Anyway, and he started playing drums, and I remember him just kind of like Wait a minute, you're bomb blasting now at 220?
Yeah, he just went straight to death metal drums.
He totally did. So when I heard that he was joining the band, I was like, oh, that's fucking cool. You get a guy in your town, and he's a guitar player, so maybe he can help write. I guess it didn't go that way, but I went up to upstate New York to sit in with Skinless, which was eventually turned into joining Skinless for a year. Then I was out of Skinless, and then I filled in for Exhumed, then the Red Chord, then Dying Fetus. And it was on that Dying Fetus tour. It was a 2-month-long tour opening for Gwar. And we ended up stopping into Guitar Center in San Francisco and getting some shit from Paul. And I just remember after we got off stage, Paul comes up to me and he goes, I like it, man. It's Dying Fetus, but I like those little parts you're putting in there, man. It sounds like you. It's cool. And I got off of that tour, got home, and recorded the Dim Mak record. And then Paul called me and he goes, James and Clinton quit. What are you doing? And I was like, let's talk. And that's basically it, And we, shot some phone calls back and forth over the course of a month, and then got us a tour and started working again.
Yeah, I mean, like Naveen said, to me, your name is like synonymous with Origin.
Yeah.
You can't. You are the drummer of Origin. So
that's the home band. That's the band that, those guys can get really pissed off at me and vice versa. But, as far as I know, nobody's calling for anybody's head in that band. It's not like this guy fucked up and he's fired. It's not the case. It's like, God damn it, he did that. Why did he do that? Whatever.
Yeah.
So it's definitely four brothers, brother.
Yeah.
And, like we nag at each other. What was interesting is that this last tour we did, this U.S. tour, it was 2 tours back to back. One of them was with Misery Index, and the other tour was with Tombs and Abysmal Dawn, and Clitoris, and they were smushed together. So it was like 7 weeks out on the road, like chasing around. Like Hypocrisy was out, Cavalera Conspiracy was out, and somebody else was out.
I think we were out at that time. I believe we saw like flyers for your guys' shows and stuff.
Every venue we went to, we were told the story of, yeah, man, this is like death metal show number 15. And then like 30 people would show up. So like the turnouts were like 3/4 of that tour was pretty rough, but the band got along great. Nobody dug at each other. Everybody kind of knew what was going on and just had to get through the damn thing. So yeah, that's the thing. That's the Origin thing.
That's what matters, man. I mean, it's really easy to get along and be really chummy with each other when the tours are going super well and everyone's getting paid and like there's going to be a fat crowd every night. But the real things that you have to deal with as a band are playing shows like that and getting through stuff like that. And if you can make it through those shows and still have the brotherhood thing going on, then that's when it's good.
You're doing it right.
It's really about getting out of each other's way, man.
Totally.
I mean, the thing about being on tour is you probably had 3 hours of sleep. Yep. You probably drove 6 hours. You probably ate McDonald's. You probably had 3 cups of shitty gas station coffee. And you probably didn't have enough water. And you missed your girlfriend. You miss your wife. Or, and you miss home and all that stuff. And all of those things, same shit the next guy's dealing with. So you really got to mind yourself. I mean, if you're going to freak the fuck out, go to the bathroom and stick your head in the toilet and scream or something like that. Go outside, go for a run, but get away from the other guy that's hemorrhaging the same bullshit, Yeah. There's so many times that I've snapped on those guys just because of nothing that they had anything to do with.
Yeah.
And then I got to come back around and say, I'm sorry, Mike. And he's like, that's cool. And it's just like that. But it's not cool. I mean, it's cool because he understands why.
Right.
But it's, how many fucking times are you going to snap on these people in, a 20-year relationship? Eventually you learn, just get the fuck away and not shit on their already shitty parade.
100%.
Dealing with the other 23 hours,
Absolutely. Do you see yourself touring for a long time to come?
I hope so. I mean, it's why I preach posture, and it's why I like honing my technique to the point where it doesn't hurt my body so much, as I want to be able to do this, because I'm not going to go to school and get a degree in something and get a real job. I'm hoping that I'll get to tour and I'll get to teach and I'll get to, just keep playing. Whether or not I'm, blasting Origin beats in 20 years, but
that'd be awesome. I'll be there.
I know, I'll be there too. We will both be there.
70 years old.
Standing right behind the drum kit.
If Halford can do it at that level and he lived the life he lived, then I can do it at that level, considering the life that I've lived.
I think you could do
Absolutely.
it. I know you could do it.
So.
But speaking of school, you started teaching at a school, right?
Yeah. In 2017, I was able to leave the food industry. It was fantastic.
A round of applause for that.
Right.
Good job.
No, I got a couple of friends over there. Tony Maggiolino, he's the assistant director, and then Jason Gianni was one of our teachers. And I knew Jason, and Jason brought me into the school to look around one day, and Tony recognized me for who I was and who I knew. And eventually, Tony called me and he goes, "Do you want a job?" And I started working it's the Collective School of Music, known as the Drummers Collective, and it had been there since '83. It had been in existence since '78, I think.
Oh, wow.
And it had been in its location since '83, and it's this independent drum college, and you have, guys like Chris Coleman and Vinny Caliuta would go in there. Bill Burr, the comedian, used to study drums there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's a drummer.
And just all these characters. I learned about the place I initially learned about it from Mike Heller, who was at the time the drummer of Malignancy. He's now gone on to do Fear Factory and Raven, and he's still doing Malignancy. But he goes, yeah, it's the hardcore drum school in the middle of Manhattan and all that shit. And I was like, that sounds cool. And eventually ended up working there as a studio technician. I was setting up and breaking down lesson studios, making sure teachers got their lesson sheets and all that stuff, and then scrubbing the toilets. And bit by bit started picking up lessons, just doing privates and mostly hand technique, And since then, the school has moved down to the tip of Manhattan, and these bags under my eyes is because I'm working a day job at a restaurant and then going over to the Collective and doing, 2 or 3 hours worth of hand technique, lessons.
Oh, wow.
So is that where you practice? So you have a rehearsal spot?
I have a rehearsal studio that I share with 3 other guys, which is actually about 10 minutes from here. I'm in Park Slope.
Okay.
And about 10 minutes that direction is Gowanus. It's like one of the most filthy bodies of water in the country, the Gowanus Canal. And, so right there on the water, yeah, we got a studio. And you might know this guy, James Norrell.
I don't know, not off the top of my head.
He actually got me in there. I met him when he was playing in the Faceless for a bit. But
okay.
Oh, yeah. James, yeah. It's with a K. Sorry. His name is spelled K-N. Yeah, you've seen videos of him.
Yeah,
for sure.
I know who that is.
He's a good drummer.
Yeah, I know who that is.
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, he's great. He's funny as hell. I just saw him today, actually. But
he shares it with you? Is that right?
He doesn't share the room, but he is in a room there.
Okay.
And he's the guy that got me in there. But yeah, that's the second studio I've had since being in New York. I used to be in Queens, and it was in a basement studio that would flood.
Nice.
And that's terrible.
Yeah. Hey, well, you're living that big city life, man. Comes with the territory.
I know. Do you like it compared to upstate New York and KC?
Yes and no. I mean, really do like it. I like that. Like after this podcast, I'm gonna walk 3 minutes to get empanadas because I don't have to lose weight. But COVID plus 19. Yeah, so I can walk right over there. I can get empanadas. I can walk not even 5 minutes that way, and there's this little jazz and blues wine bar that I'll go hang out at and sit in from time to time.
Oh, awesome.
Studio's right down there. I'm a 20-minute subway ride from work, and it's definitely something that I think most people should experience. You should work in the food industry for a bit. You should live in a big city.
You should join a death metal band and tour in a van.
Tour in a van.
You should get into a group of people and create art.
There we go. Bingo.
I agree.
And in the words of Henry Rollins, find the guy that you hate the most in the band and write music with him.
Yeah.
That's me and Naveen. So I guess you're the one I hate the most in the band.
Wah, wah, wah.
But and I mean, so I was listening today to Chaosmos. I'm pronouncing that right. Right? Okay, good. God, that record fucking rules, man. You guys are still, it's amazing that a band who has been one of my favorite bands for so long is still pumping out such good material.
I'm glad you like that record.
I really like it.
That was a hard record for everybody. Because I think everybody was just coming out of the pandemic. Everybody lost family members during the pandemic.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Mike lost his dad. Paul lost his dad. I lost my sister. I don't know if Jason, but everybody had that nasty dark shit in the middle of the pandemic, right? Like the pandemic started off with like not having to work and here's your check and watch Tiger King and eat ice cream. And then it kind of carried on for a while. It was like, it's not funny. It's not funny anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
And, it got bad. Like, my pandemic started off pretty interesting because I was working on a pad kit in my apartment and just coming up with all different kinds of things. I'm creating and creating. This is cool. And started the Malefic Throne thing, and this is cool. But then it just kept going, and then I went through a breakup, and then other shit went down, and then it's like down. I know Paul and Mike both had real dark pockets during the pandemic too, and so when we got together to write music, we're all just like, how do you talk to each other anymore? Because we were different people than we were when we stopped touring, and so that record came together, and it's a strange record for me. I still don't know. I mean, I love a lot of things on it, but other parts of it, I'm like, man, that's a different thought process happening right there.
Yeah.
So,
don't you feel like sorry to interrupt you, but don't you feel like that's naturally something that kind of happens with every record?
Yeah, absolutely. And I did a project with a New York band here called Neurectomy, which is finally going to see the light of day. And that album took like 2 years to record. The Gorguts album, Colored Sands, took like 1.5 years, I think. And that doesn't feel right to me I mean, it works for some people, but for like Origin, everything is like, it should be a snapshot. Like Origin has to get, like, we do our albums within weeks. Like we have a very short amount of like straight up, like Paul starts sending out riffs. I start like listening to riffs and writing things down on paper, and then we get together and we hammered this record out in a week. Whoa. I think.
You're talking about from demo to finished a week?
Demo, about 1.5 weeks of rehearsal.
Jesus.
And then we went in the studio and I did the drums in 5 days. And so yeah, it's just like Origin kind of bops along, and then like I can tell when it's gonna go because Paul starts saying things like, I don't know, man, this is a little different sounding. I don't know, man. And then I always respond with, that's what you say when you write your best shit. He's like, it's a little different. It's still Origin, but it's a little different. And then the riffs start coming, and then I know that it's like, okay, here comes the first demo. We are now approximately 3 months away from going in the studio, 4 months away, or 6 months, but and that's kind of what happened here. And we got in, like, I had like a bunch of demo stuff from Paul. We flew to Kansas and we started like retrofitting it to a click track and like practicing to it and all that stuff. And then we went into the studio, and it's like Chinese food. It's cooked really fast and it's served hot and fresh, and it's delicious.
All right, I like it.
And then you play it for the rest of your life. Not like Chinese food. Chinese food doesn't keep you full very long.
No.
What I was trying to say was is like, yeah, if you can do your music quick, and you can all be like in a sense of fervor while doing it. Like, I like to be pissed off and freak the fuck out.
Yeah,
me too.
And I like going through all these whacked out emotions. I like being not who I am right now, because right now I'm at home. I got my job. I got my lady. I got my apartment. Everything's cool. But like, when I leave and I go to Kansas and I sit in that part of Kansas and I click into that mode, that's a different personality. And it's not something that I would want to have to do for very long, but it's click and there's the album, and that's a picture of where everybody was in that mindset at that moment.
Yeah.
So it's a dark record.
That's good for death metal.
The last album was happy because we got in there and it was really fucking easy, and for some crazy reason it just clicked together and all that stuff. And I only freaked out once.
What'd you freak out about?
Yeah, what was it? Yeah.
We have this song called Variance Under Transformation. It's one of the songs I did on the Meinl video. It's the slow one.
Dude, that one's my favorite one, dude. That one is so sick.
It was the demo. You know how you got these cute little names for demos? The demo was originally called The Paul That Should Not Be. Because it reminded me so much of The Thing That Should Not Be. And that is one of my favorite Origin songs too. But for some whack reason, I could not get the snare. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I couldn't get the snare on that 5 because I counted as an 8, I think. And for some crazy reason, I could not land the snare. I couldn't sit in the groove right. And eventually, I think Paul went to the drum kit and like hummed the riff and hit the snare, and something clicked, and I was able to like get in there and make it work. So that song was really kind of difficult in the studio, and that one it gave me some trouble. But once it worked, yeah, I think I was seeing it like upside down or backwards.
So yeah, you were just the freak out was just about a part, nothing.
I could not get that first. I could not get that groove. I didn't, and I don't think Paul and I necessarily communicated right on it. I think I thought I was playing it right, and he's like, "No, it goes here," and then I was mad.
Yeah.
So eventually, we eventually talked it out, and eventually I got it, and it ended up being just as cool as I thought it was. It's not like, no, you're squashing my creativity and the song's gonna suck. It was just one little thing that needed to be clicked over, and it ended up being a killer song.
Yeah, dude, that song is so good, and the Meinl video for it just fucking rips.
Which,
so hard.
If anyone listening has not seen those Meinl videos, please go and watch them, because it's such a good capture of your drumming.
Yeah,
it's such a fantastic. All of those Meinl videos are done fantastically, but obviously I'm a sucker for the death metal videos, and your videos just fucking killed. I'm so glad that they happened.
Thank you. That's nice. I mean, that recording studio was where Proud to Be an American, where at least I Know I'm Free was recorded.
Nice.
And they, like, as soon as I got in there, the guy's like, "You know who so and so is?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "He's a country western star." And I'm like, "Well, that would explain it." I don't know, but he goes, "Yeah, he sang the song Proud to Be an American." I'm like, "Oh, sure." He goes, "He sang it right there." And so
you're like, "All right, oh yeah, well, check this out."
No, I just walked over there and stood in the area and took a big whiff, and like being a smart ass,
Okay.
Get smacked one of these days. But yeah, that was, like I said, that was fun. that guy, that engineer, he had a snare drum. It was the Lars Ulrich snare drum, and he had it sitting in a corner upside down. And I was like, "What are you doing with that Lars snare?" And he goes, "That's my sympathetic resonance snare." I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah, if I want to get more sympathetic resonance off of the drums in the room, I'll go adjust the snares on it." And mic. So he mics an upside down snare for whenever the dude hits the toms.
Oh,
that's a good idea.
He wants to be able to blend in sympathetic snare resonance.
That's a good idea.
Oh.
Was it Steve?
Not sure.
Okay.
That's really fascinating, though. I want to hear it now.
Dude, that's awesome. How long have we been going for?
Hour and a half.
Really?
That's
crazy.
My
God, we haven't taken any questions.
Yeah, John, are you cool with us taking some questions?
Absolutely. I feel like this is like Joe Rogan level podcasting where we're just talking about whatnot.
Yeah,
we're talking
exactly.
about video games.
Well, at least we're not taking you back to MMA like every Joe Rogan does.
Hey, listen, CTE.
We could talk about the Liver King, but
I did. I caught a guy in a north-south choke, and I was able to get the Naga bronze medal.
Oh yeah. Wait, you actually do jiu-jitsu, right?
I did. I haven't trained since the beginning of the pandemic, which is sad. But
well, so Naveen was doing jiu-jitsu as well, and I was like, dude, you have to be careful because he was coming home hurt every night, and I was just like, we're not going to be able to play music anymore because of your.
I actually hurt my shoulder so bad where I was like, that's it. I can't play drums anymore. It's not gonna happen. And I couldn't play drums for like a couple weeks, and that's when I was like,
I switched to Muay Thai eventually.
Yeah.
You know, I needed more sweat. My jiu-jitsu was going pretty good, but yeah, like you, something up here it sounded like a zipper.
Yeah,
oh boy. And my right ankle got like brutally dislocated and like immediately set back. It was like plop plop. I was like fuck, and couldn't walk for a week. Yeah,
that's going to happen.
I went over to Muay Thai, and I don't like when I was doing Muay Thai, I was not doing any sparring. I was just doing the punching and kicking on the bags and working with a partner with just getting the sweat and shred in, and man.
The sparring looks pretty gnarly. Do you know Kareem? Indie merch. He was Black Dahlia's merch guy. He does night shift now. Well, we were on tour with Black Dahlia and Kareem was selling merch for them, and he was training Muay Thai, and he would spar with a guy like before shows, and it just looked so fucking gnarly.
Mike Hill from Tombs, he's a Muay Thai guy too.
Oh wow.
And like I said, I have not trained in a while. A lot of it has to do with just not wanting to be, like not having been around other people, nonetheless, weird people that were just kind of weird at first, but now that we've been through the pandemic and a lot of the weird political shit that went down, now these kind of weird people are actually like full blast Nazi sympathizers and like crazy people that I just don't want anything to do with. There's a lot of weird shit in the fight community that is tough. This never happened in the Muay Thai gyms or the boxing gyms either.
Interesting.
But a lot of times in the jiu-jitsu school, it was just like, hey, did you listen to Rogan? I don't know. That guy's all right. That guy he was talking to. I'm like, I don't know about that.
Did you do boxing too?
I did for a bit. That was what I was doing during the pandemic. I was, I found this guy and we were going out to Astoria Park, out in the park, and just doing just one-on-one training,
drills
with
and stuff. That's cool.
It was nice. Yeah, drills. It was really nice.
So you're not doing anything. You're not training in anything right now.
Can't you tell?
Just training, training in post-podcast empanadas.
No, can't wait. No, I'm just playing drums as much as possible.
Yeah, honestly, man, I'm the same. Like, I did the jiu-jitsu thing for a little while, but at a certain point, there's only so much time in the day, and I'd rather just kind of focus on music and like just do yoga or something in the morning and whatever. It's all good. I'm not going to be this fighter guy anyway. Who cares? I'm not tough.
Me neither. But no, I would probably go back to Muay Thai or a boxing gym if there was one nearby. And I think the closest boxing gym to me is in Manhattan. That's got to be, I think it's about 20-minute subway ride. So maybe maybe soon. I don't know.
See what happens. But
all right, let's
shit. I can't believe we've been talking for an hour and a half. I would have thought 45
sure we'll trail
minutes,
off on some other tangents too. You want to hit us with some questions, Harrison?
Sure. I mean, you guys did ask.
Oh shit! Got the Minel. Oh, you started playing those Minel sticks.
Wait, they have sticks now?
Yeah.
I mean,
what's up with that?
But they're sick.
Are they?
They're sick.
I'll ask them to give me some. Try them out.
I'm just going to keep interrupting you guys every time you bring up questions.
We do that to him all the time, so it doesn't matter.
You guys did ask most of the questions already.
Perfect.
Okay.
But one of them was from Not a Drunk. Is it common to break pedals that often, or does it just happen because John is a fucking monster behind the kit?
He wears boots when he plays, like Pete Sandoval. So that's why
you wear Doc Martens when you play?
No, I wear cinder blocks tied to my feet with bent rebar.
God,
actually, I wear a pair of really dainty Sauconys these days.
I saw you post a picture of these. You're wearing those toe.
Oh, the Mandals.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the Mandals. I remember that.
Okay, yeah, I was feeling a bit extra emotional that day. So
we just call it extra.
Okay, now I will get around. No, you're not supposed to break bass drum pedals like that, and I don't know why I do, because I don't think I'm necessarily doing anything terribly hard to them. I don't stomp on them nearly as much as I used to. I think by circumstance, I was testing out. So by circumstance, it's kind of messed up, but I was testing out a pair of heel risers for a company, and they somehow. It's going to expose the next weakest part. So the way they bolted to the plate made that weak, and it toppled, and it snapped. And like I said, the other time was because I set up on a stage that had a bit of a bend to it, and I think that bent the plate, and that caused metal fatigue, and it eventually snapped. Springs? Well, I mean... multiple nights at 260 and above will eventually just cause a spring to snap. So you just got to keep extra springs with you. But the shoes, get back to jiu-jitsu for a split second. So I had a massive ringworm on my arm once from jiu-jitsu.
Yep. I think I had that too, actually.
Yep.
Yeah.
And one of the guys, dude, put some bleach on it. I'm like,
Jesus Christ.
Sure, why not?
Oh my
Splat. And killed the ringworm, but whatever.
Yeah.
But I also, somewhere between jiu-jitsu and a bad truck stop shower, I developed the toe fungus.
Oh, no.
And the shit started turning yellow and getting thick and all fucked up. And
in between your toes?
Started to hurt in the nail. You can look this shit. And I'm like, and last tour I was on, I had a pair of Adidas shell toes, and I'm like, why this shit fucking hurts? What the fuck's going on? And eventually I got back to the doctor, and the doctor's like, yeah, you got to go to a podiatrist. And can't believe I'm telling. This is the first time I've ever told this story, by the way. So I went to the podiatrist, and I was nervous at the podiatrist, and he's just like, okay, and he looks at my feet, and he goes, yeah, I can fix that. This is what we got to do. And so we went through the treatments and all that stuff. It's cleared up. I never thought I'd be able to walk around outside with sandals on or some shit like that.
Whoa.
But it's so cool that I was able to get fixed. So he recommended things like wear bamboo socks. So I bought a bunch of bamboo socks. They're really fucking comfy. And he's like,
I'm buying some.
They breathe well. Bamboo comforter as well.
Every time you get off the stage, you want to spray out your drum shoes with Lysol, because your drum shoes are probably going to go into a bag, into a road case, and they're not going to be able to dry out properly. So, all right, I'm going to have a can of Lysol for my drum shoes. Wear flip-flops in the shower and all these kind of things. It wasn't really a dirty thing. It's just like I missed something somewhere in the chain.
Yeah.
And ended up with that fucked up shit, and got rid of it, luckily. But like I said, it was somewhere between a funky mat at a jiu-jitsu gym or a gross-ass flying J shower somewhere.
All the above.
All the above. And
All
so
the
the mandals, what that was about is that was just about breathability. I used to wear Merrells because I liked the arch. And, I think I've already ditched those mandals, though, because they don't quite feel right.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
I'm thinking of the hiking boots, the Merrells.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they have these things called the chameleon. It's their shoe. And they're a little too warm. So my goal there was to eliminate as much moisture in the shoe as possible. But I think with bamboo socks and spraying out the shoes with Lysol every night,
There you go. Take Lysol on tour, people.
I wear these
I do.
for drumming now. They're like these. They're basically like a sock, but with like a little bendy sole. It's kind of like wearing no shoes at all.
It looks pretty cool.
But yeah, those are pretty sweet for drumming. Because I find that with the doubles, it's hard for me to do it in a sole. Like if the sole's not super flexible. Have you found that at all? Or I always thought it was incredible that you did it in those hiking boots.
I used to, and then I kind of got out of it because that's like $130 pair of shoes, and and basically what eventually started happening was I would just have a pair of sneakers that I would just eventually just use for drumming shoes. I never really paid too much attention with how the structure of the shoe interacted with the pedal, but it was just so I had a pair of shoes for my pedals, so I wasn't walking through the streets of wherever and then getting on the fucking drum kit and getting New York City, rat guts on my pedals or whatnot.
That's a good idea.
And at the same time, not playing show in the same shoes and then just staying in those shoes all the fucking time.
Yeah, that's disgusting. But I do it, so.
Sure.
I just learned a lesson, though, through this podcast.
Not do that.
She does it with Doc Martens.
Yeah, I do it
too,
with Doc Martens.
Ooh, that's like kind of leather too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have the vegan ones, but it's still, some weird material that I should not be wearing all the time. I wear sandals as much as possible. You do that on tour.
The ratio.
Yeah.
That's what we call it. You gotta get that ratio going.
The ratio going, man.
All right, Harrison, any other?
Yeah, we got another one. A New Level of asks, what's your favorite Origin song?
Man, that kind of changes as time goes on. Right about now, I think my favorite Origin song is either All Things Dead, and it was definitely my favorite Origin song when I did it on the Minol video.
It kills, man. It kills.
And For Never. And For Never is a song from Entity, and it's almost kind of like a companion song to Saligia almost. It's got a very similar start-stop part in it. And that's just one that we never got around to playing live. It's a super dense song, and it's really fucking cool. And then I would also have to say You Fail, which is like the first black metal song we did that was just kind of forgotten, So a lot of those forgotten songs are the ones that I really like the most because, as you go on as a band, you just kind of you play a lot of the same songs. I love Saligia, of course. I love Saligia and I love Aftermath, but both of those songs are such a pain in the ass because they always land either A, later in the set, or B, on the back end of like a 4-song block. So yeah, right now I'm going to say either All Things Dead or For Never.
Not Portal?
No, not Portal, but Portal's got a kind of a cool story to it.
Dude, when Portal came out, it was like, actually, I kind of wanted to say this, and that this is because you were, a long time ago, you were talking about how the first Origin album isn't really that fast. And then, dude, when Informus came out, it was like everything changed.
Yeah.
Because it was so fucking fast in comparison to anything else that was out. And like, it was just like we've arrived, like this next wave of like super tech death metal.
Oh yeah.
I feel like that album like started all that. All these bands that are like, you know, Rings of Saturn and like Archspire and all those kinds of bands. I think it was all after Informus.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it started for the tech death metal scene. That is kind of the subject zero.
I think so.
Thank you very much. We were kind of chasing. We were sort of chasing Cryptopsy, and I was chasing, you know, Formula's Fatal to the Flesh at that time, and we were just trying to. I mean, it's funny how that went because none of that material was written at that tempo. I mean, it was fast, but it wasn't. I don't remember it being. I remember getting into the studio and like having a massive headache, and my friend goes, "I've got some Excedrin, but be careful, it's got caffeine in it." So I think I took 4 of those.
You're like, let's hit record.
And we started tracking shit, and I was just warming up, and all of a sudden I was really fucking excited. I was like, let's go! And he pressed record, and everybody was, what? I go, is that too fast? And during the playbacks, I remember like Jeremy being like, that's pretty fucking cool. Like, can you keep doing that or something like that? It's foggy, but I remember like, yeah, so I was basically methed out.
Wow, so we can trace the current tech death scene all back to John taking Excedrin. 4 Excedrins.
Taking 4 Excedrin migraines and not having yet developed a daily coffee habit because I was still young enough to where I didn't drink coffee all the time.
Whoa.
But that was, I remember that. And, you know, I also remember us just having a difficult time rehearsing that material because it was in the wintertime and we were in a room that had no air conditioning. And so Kansas City gets equally as cold as it does here in New York. And it's equally as fucked up. You know, we get a lot more freezing rain and sleet that just glues to the road. But at one point, we were rehearsing with electric space heaters. And then at another point in time, I was able to rent a propane space heater. It was like this big jet engine just sitting in the room, staring at you with this big red eye of Sauron, just like blowing heat at us. And we were all getting headaches and feeling really funny because we didn't have enough oxygen. We were just inhaling carbon monoxide while writing the Informus stuff. And Portal came about as one of the guys did not like it. One of the guys did not like it, and so Paul and I kept like working on it. We didn't know what we were going to do with it. We just had these parts, and we were kind of putting it together, and eventually we put it together, and we played it in front of the guy that didn't like it, and he just kind of had this look on his face, and then he left, and then he came back the next couple of days later, and he's like, "All right, so let's look at this song idea then," and that's kind of how it went. So yeah, Portal almost didn't happen.
Wow. That would have been sad for the world.
No one would have ever known, actually.
I hate this camera.
Yeah, no, that was like I said, I mean, it was just when Portal came out, I was just like, all right, man, that's it. Like, what else can I do?
Well, do you feel like that? Do you hear what we hear, that Origin exists in the current scene? Like the more modern bands take you guys as a huge influence?
I'm familiar with it because I'm told that.
Yeah.
And it's the same fucking story. We never went out to record, you know, benchmark seminal album. We we just went out to record to do what we could do, and it just happened that when we were in the studio, it teed off pretty well. And you know, the next step was getting back home and practicing for the next tour, and like, oh, now we got to play these songs fast, and then we played them even faster. But I don't know. No, I mean, I think I lost the question.
I was just wondering if you hear your band in the current scene. Do you hear the influence?
Yes, here and there. Here and there, I hear it. I hear a lot of the arpeggio sweep stuff. I see the one-handed rolls. I see the double strokes on the kicks. A lot of, like the vocal attack that is in the earlier Origin material. Man, have I been out of focus the entire damn time?
I don't think so.
I think it's all right.
Yeah. We're staring at you.
On my end. Okay. I do this because it causes it to fucking adjust its zoom.
Yeah.
But
threatening the camera.
I hear things here, but I also hear it from the opposite spectrum. I hear the deicide in our vocal attack.
Yeah. Totally.
I hear the Derek Roddy and the Pete Sandoval in the drums.
Yeah.
I hear the Napalm Death and the Fear Factory and the guitars. I hear a lot of that stuff. So, I hear us drawing on our influences quite often.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And of course, we're running it through our filters, and out the other end comes, the Origin stuff, and people say what they say, and it's, it's nice, it's awesome. I'm proud. I'm honored.
Hell yeah. Why?
But it's weird. It's compliments are strange. It's funny to hear that.
Yeah, I'm sure. Why did James leave the band? Because my first time seeing Origin, I saw a Freight Train on stage, and he blew my fucking mind. Just like, I just couldn't believe the power that this man was putting off. He was just crazy, and his vocal delivery, it was just unlike anything that I'd ever seen at the time.
His vocal delivery to this day is the best I've ever heard.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing.
I guess.
And live, you could just... I mean, on record, it's amazing, but...
Who's that kid from Lorna Shore, I guess?
Oh, Will.
Will Ramos. I guess he's the baddest motherfucker out there right now. I'm just like... But still, he reminds me of old school James Lee. I love James, and he's doing well. It wasn't working at a certain point in time. He wasn't handling the road very well, and unfortunately, we had to part ways, after some unfortunate discussions. I saw him in Minnesota on the last tour, and, same old James. I was so fucking nervous. I had not seen him in a long time, so... But yeah, James, like I said, to this day, he has... I don't know if he even sings anymore, but he definitely has the best... And just like talking to him about it, he approached death metal vocalists like a fucking singer. He would tell you about how his chest works, how his vocal cords work, and he had something that he referred to, or he has something that I keep talking about like he's dead. He's not dead, but he has something that he kept referring to as natural compression, that was his ability to keep from being too loud, keep from being too quiet. I think he was like referring to his power band, and yeah, it did not matter. It didn't matter how fucked up he was. He would get on stage, bombed, and he would still deliver these sparkling performances. His timing was impeccable, and his voice never cracked, and he was just able to do that. That was that.
Yeah, I mean,
I asked him a while back if he would contribute on a project I was working on, and he's like, nope.
Wow.
I think, after his run with us, he went out with another band and had some, I don't know, but he retired at one point.
Wow.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, he was amazing. And he was one of the first vocalists that I saw that I was like, this guy is just, and this was before everyone was on click tracks the first time that I saw Origin. Now it's pretty common that people are perfectly in time or at least close, but he was just like so in time and nailing those parts with such precision that it gave me as a vocalist something to be inspired by, because not a ton of vocalists were nailing stuff with perfect precision in that way back then.
And, he was right in the middle of the stage, so he was able to hear everything. So there would be times where he would, like, half turn back and and conduct a bit, so I could tell where he was at. And, yeah, it was interesting. He got a lot of that from Don Decker.
Okay.
And if you listen to if you dare listen to the old Anal Blast records, and you'll hear a lot of similarities. Like both of those guys could do that guttural, from the ground all the way up to the high scream, or the fry scream as they call it now. And they were both able to do that. They had very similar approaches and very similar tones. And
I never put that together.
It's there. Yeah. Listen to Vaginal Vampire.
We got any other questions going there, Harrison?
Yeah, we got one more.
Okay.
Double Plate 76 asks, most unique concert experience.
That's kind of a common question.
These ones are always so hard.
Yeah.
Because it's
most unique concert experience. Okay. Well, there's a few of them, and the one that's popping into my head right now is I was with Skinless, and we went to play this festival in Montreal, and we drove up to play the fest, and then I think it was a fly-in. No, we were there on tour. Whatever. I was playing with two bass drums at the time, and we got there, and I'm looking at the house kit, and I'm like, I don't have a double pedal, and the guy's like, oh, I don't have a second bass drum. And he's like, well, we gotta. Oh shit! What am I gonna do? And I just kind of looked over, and Gene Hoglan's standing there. I'm like, hi, Gene. I'm fucked. And he goes, you need a second bass drum? And I'm like, I do. He goes, you can borrow mine, no problem. And I'm like, do I owe you any money or anything like that? He goes, no, you can use it. Just use it. Just grab it. No problem. Take it. And so I played the show with the house bass drum and then Gene Hoglan's bass drum on the left. And it was when Strapping Young Lad was doing the Strapping Young Lad record. So it had that feather on it. And that was like one of my first experiences, my first of many, like, how the hell are you that cool experiences with Gene Hoglan.
Really, really nice guy.
Like, what in the world, man? You've been there since the beginning. You've been there. You hung out with Metallica in the early days, and you're here still doing this thing. And every time I meet him, I walk away with something just like, how is that guy that cool? He's not jaded. He's not angry. Or if he is, he definitely has a place to put it. But man, that guy. So
that's actually a good answer. Shane and I are like, oh, I don't know. They had hot dogs at a show one time or something like that.
I was out with Dying Fetus, and we were opening for Gwar, and yada yada yada. I want to wear one of the masks one of these days, and something. And at the end of the Dying Fetus set, I think we were closing with something. What the fuck? Blunt Force Trauma. I don't fucking remember the song, but Brad Roberts, the drummer of Gwar, he appears on the side of the stage, and he's got the Gusher Jizmac mask. Chucks it, he brings it out, puts it down. I put the Gusher Jizmac mask on. I'm like, oh, this is fucking heavy. And stood up, got a pop from the crowd, and played a Dying Fetus song in one of the Gwar masks.
Wow, that's amazing.
Also a good story.
I have I
wore a couple of the Portal masks too. I wore the Clockhead.
Oh, dude, what? That is so cool. Okay, that's the coolest one you have so far. Portal is so good.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Portal is amazing. I have a newfound love for Gwar as well because there's a documentary about them on Amazon that we watched earlier this year. And I have never been really into Gwar, but learning about the art collective of Gwar and every amazing mind behind that band and that has been behind that band the entire time is incredible. And so fascinating.
That was an interesting run. That was a 2-month-long run. All That Remains, Origin. No, All That Remains, Dying Fetus, Gwar, and a lot of good, a lot of cool things that I learned. A lot of questionable but cool things I learned. Learned some shit parts too. But that was for the War Party album. And I think that's the best Gwar record. Honestly, I think that's the best Gwar record. War Party. It's when they decided to be like a pissed off thrash metal band.
Yeah, I think they cover that in the documentary. They talk about when they were like, let's write a freaking thrash album, damn it.
It was killer, man, because that band was on fire. Everybody in that band, that was Corey Smoot and Todd Evans. You know, Corey Smoot was Flatus Maximus, you know, the second guitarist.
Yeah.
And Todd Evans of Mobile Death Camp, he was Beefcake the Mighty, the bass player. And I think they wrote the majority of that record. And just watching that band work. They're all fucking massive players. They're killer players. But, you know, they get to the venue at 10 a.m. and that machine that's an interesting machine to watch. And it was like some of the best shows I ever played because I was out with Fetus at the time. So, you know, getting to do that thing was cool.
Yeah, that's
awesome. I'm bummed that I didn't see you play with Fetus.
Me too. What year was that?
2004, I think, or maybe
okay.
Leaning into 2005 because it took us right up to Christmas. It was like October. It was like all of October, all of November, or maybe it was a little bit later. But it took us right up. Like it ended like right before Christmas.
So you only did that one tour with them?
Yeah. We talked a little bit after that, and you know we were kind of discussing, and then I ended up rejoining Origin. And so that was that.
Okay.
Definitely. I would say that's a good choice. John Longstreth, Origin.
It was a great experience. Those Fetus guys are awesome. I enjoyed the hell out of that tour.
Yeah, they're one of my and Chaney's favorite bands.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're a good band to look up. They're a good band to look up to, man. They do it right.
I know. I've been knocking them off for years. That's what I do.
That's what you do. You knock off Origin and Fetus.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like what you were saying, John. I'm the same way. I'm just trying to sound like my influences. So any originality or anything, any influence that anybody else is getting, that's like what they're hearing. You know, I'm not like, I'm going to make the most original thing today. You know, that's not like how I think of it at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, man. It's just like, as the years go on, I'm always doing some kind of, the last 6 months I've sounded a lot more like Nico McBrain, and the next 6 months I end up sounding more like Derek Roddy, and, I'm not getting my Brandon Thomas chops in here anymore. I got to sound like Pete Sandoval now. I just keep pulling these 5 to 8 elements that I know, and they keep coming in at varying different degrees, so that's just what comes out on the other end.
Yep,
yeah,
agreed.
That's awesome. Well, I think that's a good place to end it. Thank you so much, John, for shooting this shit with us and being on the podcast. I know that both of us have been looking forward to having you on. So thanks for coming on and sharing a bunch of rad stories and information.
It's my pleasure, guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. You had a huge impact on me, dude, for real. Like,
thank you.
Just got to say it straight up.
I mean,
like, game changer.
Thank you. Paul and Mike still tell the stories. They still tell the animosity stories.
I think I've heard the one, right? That you went up to them you met Paul at like a music store or something.
Oh, yeah. He's talking about when we were on tour with them. But yeah, when we were super young, Paul worked at Guitar Center in San Francisco. And so I'd be like, holy shit, dude, that's freaking Paul from Origin. Like all nervous to talk to him and stuff, you know? Like 16.
The one I liked the most was you guys, I guess, you took showers at the car wash.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, we definitely did that. We're like, dude, just put a couple quarters in there. We'll hose each other down.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. Oh, and Cheney, man, when James was first out of the band, you were on my short list for the vocalist position.
No way.
That would have been sick.
Is that that's the craziest thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
Yeah, we had like 3 or 4 people we were kind of like talking about, and it ended up being this Cat Micah that Paul really wanted in there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, anyway.
Wow, that's awesome.
All
right, we can end it there.
Yeah, we'll end it there. That's a good one.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, John.
All right, man. We'll talk to you soon. Really good talking to you, man.
Enjoy those empanadas. Great talking to you, man.
All right, dude. Maybe we'll hang out soon.
Have a good night.
Yes. See you in the spring. All
okay.
Right?
Hell yeah, man. All right,
we'll
see
be
you
out
soon.
in the States in the spring.
Awesome.
All right. Well, I should have played that a long time ago, but anyway.
All right, everyone, have a great week.
Yeah, we will see you bastards next week.
Yeah, thank you so much for listening. We love you guys.
Peace.